So I realized after like 10 years of doing speaking events, never follow a designer. Never follow a designer. The good thing is I do have some latent design capability. So there's a touch of design here. You can see the background squiggles. But you may also see some emojis in this as well because they're the easiest thing to put into add color. So I am going to start us off with a story. Probably for the last 6 years, I've been working in what we call product operations. If I ask if anyone knows what that is, at least I know there's one person in the room that is also in the field, so at least I've got one hand up. Who else knows what it is? Or maybe even heard of it? Okay, smattering of people. So I've been working for about 6 years in this space. Now, the position I generally hold is working with cross-functional product leadership. So product directors, VPs of product, designs, heads of research, data, engineering, all the good things, as Julia mentioned, that triad of good people. And a couple of years ago, I was working at a product company, and the product director came to me and said, Chris, we need your help to understand how our teams are performing, because one of them's really high performing, and one of them isn't quite hitting the mark. So, okay, this is my job. I come and I enable, I come and understand how teams are working, try and amplify, as I was saying to someone before, I can't spot his face now. The word amplification is really important, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. How do we amplify good practice across the organization so all teams are high performing, or as high performing as we can get them? So the first team that she was mentioning, really, really strong on the vision of the company. Not just the product vision or that team's vision, the vision of the company, they were really strong on it. They were really driving a lot of customer value. What they were creating, customers enjoyed, customers liked. It was a core part of the product, and they really were having some success there. They were a bit slow, a little bit slow. And the same person I've just mentioned now was actually talking about collaboration, and sometimes collaboration slows you down. They were fantastic collaborators, but they were a little bit slow. They weren't getting to market as quick as possible. So even though customers were enjoying what they were producing, they weren't able to get enough of it. The team were working really well together, really good communication, both inside the team and externally, good relationship building skills, good presentation skills. They were making no money, or at least they had no direct correlation with the money that the business was making to the team and what they were doing. Bring up the second team, not as strong with the vision, didn't really think about it too much, worked real quick. They were iterating super fast. Every few days, they were able to release something different and new. And the thing that they were building required that to be the case. A little bit toxic. Can anyone really say the words little bit and toxic together? Let's just say toxic. They didn't really work particularly well together, incredibly role siloed, opposite to what Julia just was mentioning. A lot of hand over the wall, but they were doing it quite quickly. A lot of really strong stakeholders who were basically telling them what to build. They were making loads of money. That team, even though not particularly aligned to the vision, were making lots of money. It wasn't particularly sustainable, and they were starting to see it dropping off, and they started to panic and iterate as fast as they possibly could. But they were still making money. So which of these two teams, this is an interactive talk, which of these two teams is the high-performing team? The first one and the second one, and you can just shout out. First. Thank you all for entering the competition. You're all wrong. Neither team is high performing because you've got one that's doing good things for customers in the business from a vision perspective, and one that's making money that is going to stop making money because they've stopped understanding how to iterate and make value because they're not good at working together. Neither is high performing. If you ask the product director, it's the first one, we're achieving the vision. If you ask any kind of business director, what is the commercial, sales, marketing, they're going to go, who's the first team? I don't care about that. This one's making money. Do I even care how they're building? It doesn't matter to us. Just keep on cracking on. Keep on going forward. So in my position here, you can't just go, well, this one's great and this one's not so great. Like, let's try and mold them together, because actually neither of them are achieving what I need them to achieve. So you get to a point, first emoji, where you have to ask the question, how are you defining high performing? What does high performance look like in your organization, your teams, your people? If you ever see me speaking or writing, I have like a newsletter that I share. I'm really, really specific with my words. I really, really care what people mean when they say these things. So when the product director is saying to me high performing, my understanding of it is very different to theirs. What they mean is a team achieving the vision in a really nice way. Mine is, as I'm going to tell you through this talk, slightly different. But I also care about every single word on this screen. So, competition number 2, what is a product team?
That tells us we're wrong.
Correct. What is a product team? Because it's really, really important. We can't just sit here and say, I'm part of a product team, if we don't actually know what it means. And it doesn't just mean a cross-functional mix of people doing stuff and building products. That's not what it means. Because that could be a feature team or a project team or a non-digital product team. So what do we mean when we say product team? Over the last, I think even Julia mentioned, it's been 25 years since Agile. We both used to work at ThoughtWorks, so we know each other relatively well. And ThoughtWorks were one of the organizations that went up into the mountain and discussed Agile. You know, those 20 white guys up a hill and said, this is how we're going to do it. And then now we all do it. Some of those people worked at ThoughtWorks and some of them still do. So we've got a little bit of experience with Agile. Over the last 25 years and more, every organization that is selling products today, physical or digital, has been through multiple transformations. We've been through the digital one. We've got a website. We've been through the technology one. We now have some software engineers that we've hired and they're building things for us. Now we have a database. We're building our own technology. And they've been through the Agile transformation. Like, we're done. We're done with that now. Every single organization is doing it. Whether it's good or, let's say, not so good is another question for another talk. But every organization is doing Agile in some form, in some way. Even the ones that are highly regulated and are doing possibly a little bit more waterfall are still Agile internally. That's the not so good ones. So when we come to thinking about product team, we are now in a place where we have to think about a new type of operating model. So we really only have 2 things left now. We're either working in project model or product model. Now, as Julie mentioned, Marty Kagan, he's relatively well known in the field, I believe. He's starting to talk about product model, product operating model. He's kind of starting to coin terms. When he speaks, terms get coined. This is kind of the only place we're in now. You're working in either one of them or a blend of both, and it's probably going to feel a little bit awkward for you. Project model is very much about being output driven. We know what we want to build. We've been told what we want to build, and we will go ahead and build it. Roles are often quite siloed. Hand it over the wall, design, here you go, engineering, go ahead and build. Okay, QA's not quite ready. Let's wait a week for QA to happen. Relatively data restricted, normally. That doesn't mean they're not data savvy. It's just they can't get access to data. They can't use it. They can't analyze it, and they can't roll it into their product decisions. Therefore, kind of reactive to the market, to competitors, to the business needs, the business leaders telling them what to build. Therefore, usually quite closely managed. Their team, their director saying, this is how we work, this is what we work on, this is how you will do it. Therefore, quite business-centered. Being business-centered is not such a bad thing because we're here to make money because we're getting paid to do that. There is a return on the investment. You don't just have jobs to build beautiful things, you have to have an understanding of the business. But usually quite requirement gathering mentality. Like, let's just have a BA that just gathers requirements and we'll build the stuff. Let's have some user stories and we'll build the stuff. But they are often quite highly practical. So that's not such a bad thing. It's like if you give them something to build, they can be relatively efficient, relatively practical in getting it done. As opposed to, when I say product team, this on this side is what I mean. So when I say what is a product team, I expect you to memorize and read this out. This is how I'm defining product team because it's kind of how it's defined. Usually more outcome focused for both the business and the customer. Usually more collaborative. We work together, we understand our triad, our product trio. More data informed, so they have more data, able to analyze it, and that is seen as a good thing. Therefore more proactive. Not just following customers, competitors. More empowered. Competition number 3. What does empowered mean? Because you all want to be it, and I don't know if anyone knows.
Autonomous.
Correct. Who said that? One of you two. And another word? Autonomy without alignment is not empowerment. So yes, autonomy, I want to make my own decisions and go my own way with an alignment to what the business is asking me for. Now I'm now empowered to do good work because you have understand your alignment and you're autonomous. I do care about words quite a bit. Usually quite customer-centered and spending a lot of time understanding customers, usually problem solvers, not just tell me what to build. I want to go and figure out what to build. I want complex challenges to solve and therefore relatively experimental. Now, you will either be in one of these or a mixture of both. But the point I'm making is that on the product model side, this is where the innovators live. This is where the ones that are changing the market, the industries, the Netflixes, we don't mention Facebook anymore. The Netflixes, do we mention any of these anymore? All the ones that are at the forefront of changing industries are working in the product model. They don't call it product model. They just go, this is how we build products at Netflix or the others. Because they're working in this way, they're not working in the project model way. So if you want to be an innovator in the industry, if you want to be doing something different and really pushing boundaries, you're not going to be able to do it in the project model. It has to be in the product model. Now, myself and Ezra have a good friend who also strangely used to work at ThoughtWorks, who is working in a gaming company. And he was like, this all sounds really good, but we're not doing it. And it doesn't really matter because we're still making loads of money. Correct. And the story I used to say is, it's okay being here because loads of companies are and they're making loads of money, using his example. And about 2 weeks ago, I was talking to him about this and he was like, we're actually making less money now because we don't know how to innovate. We don't understand customers. We're not collaborating very well anymore. So you have to live in this space and it's down for you folks to try and shift over to this side. There has been books written on this already. Teresa Torres with Continuous Discovery, Melissa Perry, some bloke on the end, not sure who he is. So there has been books written on this already. There's loads of them. If you go and find them, this is not a secret. I'm not telling you anything that we don't already know. The books exist already. But I do want to introduce you to this guy. Never fear, this is not a real YouTube video. It's just a screen grab. I'm not going to play audio for you. But you should go and watch it, and there is a link here, so when you request a slide, you can go and watch it. So this is Dr. Russell Ackoff, organizational theorist. Cool job title. He was operating in like the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and he was a consultant trying to understand systems thinking. And he talks about organizations being systems of people, of processes, of products, of customers, of various levels of hierarchy. Competition number 4, does anybody know where this image comes from? Because you're going to age yourself very, very quickly if you do.
Haynes manual.
Yes. Who said that? Yeah. So this is from Haynes manual. So when you bought a car in like the 70s, 80s, 90s, you get this manual. Showed you all the inner workings of a car. Cars don't look like this anymore, I don't think. So Dr. Russell Ackoff, he talks about systems thinking and organizational structures. And he uses the example of the automobile, because he's American, he says automobile, and I think it's very, very sweet. So I'm going to use his example because it's a fantastic one. He talks about this as a system. And every single part of the car whose primary directive is to drive you from A to B, get you to somewhere, is required to do that job. You cannot take out the transmission or the engine, or take off the wheels and expect the car still to work. It still requires all those things. Equally, you cannot take out the battery and put it on the side and expect the battery to drive you anywhere. So all of these things are harmonious and they work together. Now, if you take out, this is a Ford Capri from like the 70s. If you took out the engine of the Ford Capri from the 70s and put in an Aston Martin DB9 from like 2010 into this car, it's still not going to work. It's not going to drive you anywhere because an engine and an engine is not like for like. And equally with a team or with people, you can't just take a process from over here or a person over there and go, if we combine these things, this team's going to be fantastic. It's not going to work. It's not going to be high performing in any way. They're going to have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out how things work together. So just like the car, the organizations that you work in are interconnected systems. It's not just about your siloed team building sets of features and doing it relatively quickly or relatively well. You have to understand all the various different parts of that organization. the marketing, the sales, the data teams, when I was working at Bumble, the safety teams, the regulation teams, all these things are interconnected, and some of them will impact you more than others, but you need to understand all parts of the system. So our primary aim usually is to be developing products for our customers. That's primarily what we are here to do in this interconnected system. And that system needs to be high performing. If in any way you want to be impactful in the industry, you have to be a high performing team. You cannot have elements that aren't performing as well as others, because the car won't go as quickly. The car won't get there as fast as you want it to get there, or as safely. Russell also had this great quote: "It's far better to do the right thing wrong, put something into the market, we're not quite agile enough, but it gets out there and damn, we're making money, versus to do the wrong thing right. We're really super highly agile, we have all of our rituals nailed, we're collaborative, super collaborative, and then when we put something out into the market, there's no money being made." But the question is, why not both? Why can't we do the right thing in the right way, make money, and work together really well? And all the best teams I ever worked with, I've had the pleasure of working with, do two things. They're always in two modes, always in two mindsets consistently, thinking about building the right thing. What do customers want? How is this going to impact the business? How can we learn more, put things out into the world that are going to be effective? And building the thing right. Continuous improvement, retrospectives from an agile perspective, are all about understanding how to build the thing in the right way. Continuous deployment, continuous integration, test-driven development, pair programming. It's all to understand how to build the thing in the right way. And you would hope that you would have impact by putting things into market you're really understanding, but your performance is increasing, and these two things work together. You get better at building the thing right, you become faster to get to market, more stable. The best teams I've ever worked with are always in these two modes, always consistently thinking about these two things. I want to introduce you now, because this is what the chunk of the talk is going to be on, to my framework called MPI Framework, Maximising Performance and Impact. It comes in 4 stages. Definition: how do you define high performance? How do you define high-performing product teams and high-performing organizations? Aligning around the key factors and the principles that help us to define it, but ones that we can actually do something about by focusing on the right things at the right time, depending on the organization, its team, and its people, and committing to long-term sustainable change, so therefore you become more high-performing. We're not going to talk about all of this. We're only going to talk about this bit. We're only going to talk about defining high performance in your organization. So throughout the talk, I want you to be thinking about it, because I'm going to build a high-performing team statement, and I want you to apply the areas that you work in to this statement just in your head to see how it fits. But why on earth should I be telling you this? So it's probably about time I introduce myself, even though I was introduced by John. So my name is Chris Compston. I'm a founder and independent consultant. I work with product leadership teams cross-functionally to maximize the performance and impact of their product organizations, their teams, through enabling product operations. I do consulting services, which is kind of me on the ground, working with teams quite closely and making change happen. Advisory services, which are me more talking to product leadership and guiding them to help them in that direction. And also product training, specifically around this MPI framework. So how to maximize performance and impact across the organization. As you can see, I used to work at ThoughtWorks with Julia, with Ezra, with others. These Farfetch, Bumble, and some other places as well. If you'd like to connect, that goes directly to my LinkedIn. Don't forget to actually press the button, because it doesn't connect for you for some reason. Okay, so MPI framework. We're going to talk about this first part, defining high performing. How do we define a high performing product team? This is a question I was asked of myself when I was working in the organization with the two teams. How are we actually defining this thing? So we come back to building the right thing and building the thing right. When we want to consider building the right thing, there's only 2 things we need to think about: the customer and the business. You would be either surprised or not surprised at all how many teams I work with that don't know this word, that know this word relatively well. And they really think they're adding value. They really think they're driving forward. Now, there's a return on investment for every single person, every single team, that if you don't understand the second word, you're going to really struggle. There are some teams that also don't understand the first word. They also don't understand what customer value is and how to drive it. So when we think about customers, very quickly, very briefly, because I know you all know all this already, you have to be customer-centered. Yes, you can start from a business standpoint. You can start from an understanding of the business needs this from me and my team, and this is how we make money, but you have to understand that in the context of the customer. You need to be data-informed. Pause for dramatic effect, because I do not say data-driven, and you are allowed to stop saying data-driven too. Data-driven has the connotations that you have blinkers on and you look at the data and you just do stuff with data and that's it. Data-informed means I've taken all the various inputs into my world, quant, qual, all the customer research, the business data they're getting, the performance and operational data, and then making high-quality decisions based on that data. And of course, we need good feedback loops, continuous discovery, as Julia mentioned, continuous discovery practices. So if we want to write our definition of high performing, when all we think about is the customer, we would probably say something like this. We build things for customers that they value, which is lovely, right? Now, this is where you come in and you want to start thinking about how do I put my words into here? Your build things will be different. You might be building internal tools, it might be B2C, it might be a feature team or something. Your build things will be different. Your customers should be different. You might be working with new customers, returning customers. You might be working with business client, enterprise level customers. And the thing they value is what you're going to have to figure out. If you're in a team right now that doesn't understand the customer and the value that you're driving for that customer, you're a bit like, as Julie was saying with hypothesis statements, you are not going to deliver things that they really, really want. But at least we have customer value. So we're building things for customers that they love. The second part of that is deeply understanding the business. So you need to have alignment. You need to have strategic clarity and you understand where you fit in the business, understand the competitors, your product market fit, your feature market fit in some cases, and the needs of that business, understanding competitors. And you need to also have defined outcomes. Now, remember, I'm talking about high-performing product teams, the ones that are driving towards outcomes. So if you don't have measurable outcomes and understand the impact you're driving towards, you are not a product team yet. So if we then consider the business element of this statement, we build things for customers they value enough to pay for. You need to have this second part. You need to be considering the customer and then what it is that drives the thing that you care about. Now, in my example, it's to pay for. But there are only 5 things, and Julie was touching on it just before. There's only 5 things businesses care about: making money, reducing costs, getting new customers, engaging existing customers, or share value or investment price value. They're the only things they care about. So if you actually want to, I often joke because the question even came up, how do you convince leadership? It's like the 2 magic words. How do you convince leadership? Well, it's the hardest thing to do. But at least if you start by talking about making money, reducing costs, new users, existing users, or share price and investment value, you're at least on a good starting point. Good luck with convincing leadership. Or hire me, I'll do it for you. So with our new statement, we build things for customers that they value enough to pay for. But that's not everything, because we also want to be thinking about building the thing right, in the right ways, with the right approach. So we also now need to think about culture, which is unfortunately in 2025 becoming something that is less talked about, I think, and approach. What is our approach? And I do not mean we do Scrum. I do not mean we do waterfall. What is the approach? How do we work together? So just like the car, our performance is really down to the people. With a car, you need a driver, a designer, an engineer. If you really want to go super high performance, F1 pit teams, managing directors, etc. It's all down to the people. The interconnected system is the people. And I really like this, what talk should not have a Venn diagram like every talk. This is by Simonetta Batiga. She's a product leadership coach. She talks a lot about finance, by the way. I definitely suggest following her, joining her free webinar on finance, because it's really, really good for people that don't understand finance, like myself. But she really is pointing out here the value to the business. If you have good value to the business and a great team culture, you're kind of going to lack customer appeal because you've not quite understood what value to customer looks like. If you have good culture and understand customers, you're going to lack commercial success, just like the example I gave you right at the beginning. However, if you don't have great team culture, you just have toxic team culture because you don't have it. So you might be making money and you might know the customer and know what value looks like, but actually, does anybody really want to work in these organizations with those people? Unfortunately, like I say, the world we're in today, we don't talk about that as much. There is a link here as well, so when I share the slide, you can have that. Now, there's some cultural indicators to high-performing teams. These being, I'm not going to explain leading and lagging indicators to a group of product people, but the leading indicators are the ones that we can identify that we hope in the future will give us what we're looking for, which is high performance in this case. So we need people that have the intrinsic motivators, which comes from the book Drive, What Really Motivates Us by Daniel H. Pink, another good book to read. We need autonomy. I want to understand and solve complex problems, and I've got the freedom to do so with alignment because I know what the business needs. Mastery, I have high capability. I'm capable of doing this job, and if I'm not, I can learn more, and the company wants to train me and supports me to do that. And purpose, which is somewhat around alignment. Why do I exist? Why do I work at this company? Why am I here doing these things? I need to know all of this. And that's what intrinsic motivators are. They're just human things. The second part is that we need psychological safety with inclusivity and diversity values. This is the bit that we're really kind of like losing at the moment. And I would challenge you all with making sure that this remains and continues to be valuable to us. If you have an inclusive team, by the very nature of being inclusive, you will be more diverse. If you have a diverse team and mindset, you are probably going to drive more customer value because your customers are everyone, usually, not always. There's certain products and apps that are very, very specific in their customer base, but they're still all humans at least. They still have different brains. If you are driving inclusivity by being psychologically safe, you will drive diversity. Therefore, you are probably going to make more money if you really want to boil it down to that. And finally, continuous learning improvement practices. Yes, you do need growth mindsets. Absolutely. It should be on all your CVs. The reason I say that is because it's now 8:30 on a Thursday evening and you're still stuck here listening to me talk. So the growth mindset win. Whack it on the CV. There is an opposite to this as well, though. And these are the indicators of low-performing teams. And surprise, surprise, being disengaged, disempowered, or unaligned. I don't know why I exist. I don't know what I'm doing here. I have definitely seen that since COVID and more remote working, more video calls, more heterosexual white male voices being risen, more video cameras going off. Now, turning a video camera off is not a bad thing. Everyone gets tired. Nobody wants to always have a shower in the morning. But if you are seeing people that used to be highly engaged, cameras on, talking, emoji reactions, whatever, and then all of a sudden they're slowly disappearing and going into the background, their voice isn't being heard. That's a low-performing team straight away. Find those people, support those people, ask them if they're okay. But also toxic team dynamics. As I said right at the beginning with that team, they just had some toxic traits in there. And it was for various reasons. I don't think it was a personal thing. I think it was the business that was kind of causing these issues. But there's still issues that we need to be aware of. And then resistance to change and improvement. Change fatigue is an absolute thing. And if you've been in an organization for like 2 years, you've probably seen 5 organizational transformations. Super tiring, really challenging. So resistance to change is fine. But if it's always the same, no, I don't want to come to that meeting. I don't want to have a retrospective. No, I don't think we can change. It's been done like this forever. Why bother? That's a low-performing team straight away. So when you identify these things, you need to work on those things. It is down to us to do that. So now how do we define high-performing when we know a little bit more about culture? Well, this is really simple. Together, it is an effort of togetherness, the 3-legged stool, the product trio, Together, we are building things for customers they value enough to pay for. All of this is a team sport. I used to joke that people used to say, "Oh, research is a team sport." It is, of course. Everything's a team sport. Cross-functional humans building things. And then we need an approach that maximizes the impact that we can try and generate. Again, we need to be empowered, aligned, and autonomous, but we also need to have experimental practices. Everything that Julia talked about earlier was about iteration and learning more as we go and trying to figure out what it is customers want so we can find that value. You have to have experimental practices which are different to iterative learning practices. You could be super experimental and push out like 25 A/B tests in a day. If you don't actually ever read the results and roll it back into what you're doing, you don't have the iterative learning practices. But also, and let's not shy away from, performance is sometimes about speed. It is about getting to market fast. Time to market, time to value, time to money. So it is about doing that as well. But we also have to be adaptable. We have to be able to pivot. We have to be able to change with constantly changing environments, what the business is talking about, what the customers are talking about. And you need stability in the team to be able to pivot. You need to understand your practices and your communication styles so you can really easily pivot. And essentially at the end, efficiency. So how do we use our tools? Like, honestly, the amount of times I've had to request access to a Google Doc that should just be open to everyone, and it's taken hours. It slows progress down when you times that by 5,000 people in an organization. Or I have to log into Okta to log into Jira to download something. I don't do that, but I never log into Jira. But we do need to have these tools that are really on point. So we do need a consistent approach. Consistency means repeatability. So when our organizations are growing and scaling, because they will, no organization, no business can tread water. You're either growing or shrinking. You're either seeing people hired or people fired. That's the way it is. And hopefully you're in a place where you can grow and get bigger. But consistency breeds repeatability. So when we have good understandings of standard processes and practices, we can now repeat them across multiple teams in the organization. And when we grow, it's a lot easier to onboard people and get them going. We also want to, as I mentioned right at the top of this, is amplify good practices. We need to be able to identify as a good thing happening over here. Maybe it should happen over there as well. That never works if a leader comes in and goes, there's a good thing happening there, make everyone do it. But how it does work better is if you empower the people that are doing the good stuff to share those practices with everyone and upskill and up-level everybody. So when we look at our team statement with our approach, consistency is key. You want to be able to consistently get things to customers. If you only got one thing to a customer this quarter and then it took you another 9 months to get something that they value, you're not a high-performing team. It has to be consistent. Together, we consistently build things for our customers that they value enough to pay for. Now, this statement will look very different for every person in this room, and I, again, challenge you to try and write this at least in your head for right now and on paper later on. So, how do we define high-performing product teams? We need them to understand how to build the right thing and how to build the thing in the right way by focusing on the customer, the business, our culture, and our approach, so that together we consistently build things for customers they value enough to pay for. Repetition is like really good. Like really good repetition. You have to keep saying it. That's like Donald Trump when I said that. Together, we consistently build things for customers they value enough to pay for. This is how I define high-performing product teams. So when I go into an organization and I say, how do you define it? What does it look like for you? I try and come back with this. You need to have an understanding of how we work together. It has to have a consistent approach. We need to understand our customers and the business so we drive the value for them. So that is the framework. And again, just the first part of that framework, the define part of that. How do you define? When I work with organizations, it is different every single time. It's got all those 4 components. You need all 4 factors, but the words themselves are different. And I tell you what, it's damn hard. It's really hard to write a statement to define high performance. But it's really important because our people and our teams need to know what it looks like to them so they can do it, so they can upskill themselves. Now, interesting, there is a book about this that is yet to be released. It's called The Art of Maximizing Performance Impact. It goes into every single stage. Define, align, focus, and commit with the tools and the practices and the stories that back all of that up. If you register today, but to be honest, I'll give you until tomorrow, you'll get a huge 10% off. If you don't want to scan the QR code now, very simply, myname.com/book. So if I have more than one book, that's going to get a little bit confusing. But this book will cover everything I've talked about today. And I also run like a 3-day workshop on this for organizations. All of that will be covered in here. So you can run these things yourself with the aim that you can maximize performance and impact. Kind of not upcoming events anymore, because I've just come back from Spain, where I spoke in Malaga, Valencia, and Madrid on the same topic. I'm speaking here in London, obviously. In September, I'm speaking in Berlin at a new conference called Product Lab, and then a Productize conference in Lisbon, which is really fantastic. If you're looking for a European conference, it's really great. I do believe there is something called Unleash Summit happening in September as well, so you might want to watch out for that one. I'm not going to add it to the list yet. But yeah, wink, wink. So let's review. Define what it means to be high performing in your organization. Do it for yourselves, do it for your teams, but then push it into leadership and say, look, if you want us to be high performing and driving those business changes and that customer value, you need to help us to understand what it means. And we have to define that together. And there's only 4 things to focus on: customers, the business, culture, and approach. Now, the framework goes into way more. It goes into the principles of being strategically aligned, value-driven, outcome-focused, and financially impactful, each with its own set of things that you need to focus on. Because organizational change is super hard. You can't just go, oh, let's do a bit of customer focus for a little bit. It's not going to work. There's a lot of factors you need to take into account to make organizational change happen. So maximize your performance and impact using the MPI framework. You can download the slides here. Again, myname.com/slides. And that was me. Thank you very much.